With around 1500 characters in the Fire Emblem series, statistically speaking, around 1100 should share the same birthday, according to that famous birthday paradox at least. Unfortunately, we have no way to actually check this, because for the vast majority of Fire Emblem characters, their birthdays are not something that's really celebrated in the midst of war. That said, the number of characters with said birthdays, as well as ages to go along with them, is ever growing. The last 4 original Fire Emblem games have all made this information available for your units, and there's no reason to suggest that will not happen in the future. And among these many birthdays are some very interesting things to point out, such as references hidden among them, mechanics that use a character's birthday in unique ways, and more. But before we get to this trend that started with Awakening on the 3DS, we have to acknowledge the very first time a character's birthday mattered. And that is all the way back on the GBA, in the Blazing Blade. As while your units here don't have any known birthdays, you can decide marks, the avatars, yourself. Sort of. You can't pick a date, you can only pick your birth month, which then decides what kind of affinity mark has. In the Japanese version, this is actually decided using a much bigger table, consisting of both the birth month as well as his blood type, which was removed in the Western version, simplifying the way Mark's affinity works. For January, his affinity is light, February and November are ice, March and May is wind, April and December is thunder, in June and October he has the power of anima on his side, July and September is fire, and August is dark, meaning that Mark having an affinity for light and dark is actually rarer than all others. The way these affinities work is that they provide minor boosts to every unit that shares Mark's affinity. However, if we assume that these affinities are the same for all other characters, we can use that to potentially deduce their birth months as well, with of course light and dark the most interesting, because those are limited to 1 month. By that logic, Lucius, Lorena, Carol and Louise were all born in January, while Carla, Raph, Isadora and Merlinus were born in August. However, some of these are a little contentious. For example, Ninian having an ice affinity is a little too coincidental for me to be truly her birth month, and you can definitely raise question marks towards Carol and Carla being light and dark as well. So let's instead move on to Awakening, where every playable character has a birthday listed on their roster. If you visit the barracks on a character's birthday, real time by the way, not in game, there will be a sort of little celebration where the birthday boy or girl will receive a ton of EXP, a random item and a temporary boost. Basically all the things the barracks usually provide at once. The game is set up in such a way that all months have exactly 4 birthdays in them, with none overlapping of course, which actually goes against the birthday paradox, but oh well. The wildcard is Robin. You decide when their birthday is, and so it can overlap with one of your units. In this case, both are celebrated at the same time. Ironically enough, Robin's birthday is actually celebrated less than the other units, as they don't get a boost or an item or whatever, instead just a special message from a random unit to celebrate the occasion. Well, I literally just said that every month has 4 birthdays. That was once upon a time not true. Old Hubba has an unused roster description that lists his birthday as February 29th. Ironically enough, making February the only month with 5 birthdays rather than 4. Not only was Awakening the first game to include birthdays in the first place, it was also the first to start having a little fun with them. For example, the list of characters whose birthdays are on days past Fire Emblem games released is too long to be a coincidence. In fact, every single child unit shares their birthday with a Japanese game release. Lucina is April 20th, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light and Path of Radiance release day. Severa is January 21st, the same as Mystery of the Emblem. Brady is February 22nd, the same as Radiant Dawn. Yarn is March 14th, matching Gaiden. Na is on March 29th, which is the same as the Binding Blade. Laurent is April 25th, aka the Blazing Blade. Cynthia May 14th, that's Genealogy. Owain has July 15th, that's New Mystery of the Emblem. Inigo is August 7th, which is the same as Shadow Dragon DS. Kiel is on September 29th, that's the same as the Arcania Saga, yes, that's getting represented. And Noir has October 7th, matching the Sacred Stones. That leaves one child unaccounted for, Morgan. And that is on purpose actually, as Morgan's birthday is always on May 5th, which is Children's Day in Japan, the final celebration of Golden Week. Appropriate, I'd say. Some first generation birthdays also follow this example of celebrating real life significant dates. For For example, Cordelia's birthday is July 7th, which matches the Japanese holiday of Tanabata, a festival that celebrates a folktale of two lovers who can only meet on one day in the year, referencing her relationship, or lack thereof, with Crom. Henry's birthday is November 13th, the number 13 most likely picked for its association with bad luck and witchcraft. Muriel shares her birthday, February 12th, with Charles Darwin, which could possibly be a nod towards the fact they're both scientists. Awakening also gives us some minor insight into past characters. For example, Tiki reappears in this game, of course, confirming her birthday to be February 28th, which we can assume is the same in Shadow Dragon, thus making her the only Arcania character to have a confirmed birthday. And this is actually kept consistent, as in Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE, Tiki reappears, albeit as a sort of computer program. But more importantly, her birthday here is listed in her profile as, once again, February 28th, some nice attention to detail. Another character with some level of consistency is Anna. Now, obviously the Annas we meet in Awakening, Fates, Free Houses and Engage are not actually all the same person, and that is reflected in their birthdays as well, as they're not the same. Instead, they are all in the same week. Engage Anna is first, her birthday is on June 8th, Free Houses Anna follows after that on June 9th, before then Fates Anna celebrates on June 10th, and Awakening Anna on June 11th. As such, we can probably safely conclude that if Fortune's Weave has another playable Anna, her birthday will most likely be June 7th. Does that make me a leaker? Since we're already partly talking about Fates, let's move on to that game next. This game does basically the same thing as Awakening. Birthdays are listed in the roster, and when it is a character's birthday, you can talk to them in your castle and they'll receive an EXP boost, random item, and gain boosts in speed and luck. Which item is received is actually preset depending on which game you're playing and what chapter you're at, and thus it can actually be farmed. Now, I will say that the weapons you can obtain via this method are not the strongest in the game, but if you're short on options, you can definitely do worse. Just like Robin, you can also set your own birthday for Corin, and visiting your castle on that day will have all characters there congratulate you. If you go to your private quarters and Corin is married, their partner will have some unique lines and even give you flowers too. Compared to Awakening, the birthdays and Fates are significantly less reference heavy. Then again, you can't exactly reference much when it is abundantly clear that Fates went out of its way to have 0 birthdays overlap with Awakening, the sole exceptions being Selena, Odin and Laszlo obviously. Even the child units that are blatant references to past Awakening characters, so Asugi, Rajat and Kaldori, don't share their birthdays with their inspirations, instead being one day before. Despite Fates carefully dodging every Awakening birthday, it is however the first game in the series to have 2 different characters have the same birthday. And that's because Saizo and Kaze and Flora and Felicia are twins, and thus have the same birthday. So is there then really no reference to anything whatsoever? No. There is one, and it's clearly deliberate. In Awakening, every kid but Morgan had a birthday referencing past Fire Emblem games. And Fates deliberately reverses this. No kids have relevant birthdays, except for Kana. And their birthday is April 19th, the Japanese release day for Awakening, the only game whose release date was not yet referenced. This little trend would end as quickly as it started though. In Free Houses, no character's birthday is June 25th, which is the day Fates released. The ban on having the same birthdays was also lifted here, although it was still clearly avoided if possible, there just ended up being some overlap anyway. For example, Ophelia's birthday of September 15th is used again for Catherine. Although, technically Catherine's birthday is on the 15th of the Horsebone Moon, which corresponds to September, but our real life month names are not used in Free Houses at all. There is actually evidence to suggest that more Fire Emblem worlds use this terminology rather than one we use in real life. In a support between Farina and Kent in the Blazing Blade, Kent says his birth month is the month of the Pegasus, according to the Alibian calendar, while Farina is born in the month of the Archer. However, at the start of the game, you fill in Mark's birthday using real-life months, suggesting that perhaps Awakening and Fates also only use real-life months to make it easy for us. Elise and Fates World may not actually use them themselves. Compared to the 2 3DS games, Free Houses definitely knows how to celebrate birthdays better. If it's your unit's birthday, you can buy them flowers or treat them to tea in order to improve your relationship, which feels a lot more personal than the random boosts of past games. Once again, you can decide Byleth's birthday yourself, which actually becomes Sophie's her birthday as well. And because of the in-game calendar, it is actually guaranteed to happen during your playthrough now as well. On this day, either your house leader or Rhea, if your birthday is before picking a house leader or you sided against Edelgard, will give you a letter during the academy phase, which also contains a unique item that boosts your charm when equipped. During the war phase, you once again have a birthday and you again receive a letter, albeit without an item. This time around though, the letter is not necessarily from who you might expect. Edelgard and Claude stay the same, but Flame is now the rider for Silver Snow, while Azure Moon either has Gilbert, if your birthday is in one of the first months of the year, or Dimitri if later. Just like in Fates, references and nods are nowhere to be found among Free House's birthday roster, Anna notwithstanding. The only characters somewhat resembling an exception are Rhea, Flame and Sedith. Their birthdays match with the days that celebrate the saints they secretly are. Rhea's birthday is January 11th, St. Cyril's Day, Flame is July 12th, St. Kathleen Day, and Sedith is December 27th, St. Keyhole Day. That's it. In Engage, once again, birthdays are listed in your ally notebook, back to the ways of old and using real-life months. Once again, Alir is the exception, as literally one of the only things we can decide for them is their birthday. On that day, characters in the Somnia will congratulate you and give you an item, it's nothing too crazy. When it's another unit's birthday, you get to repay the favor and give them an item yourself, but again, it's nothing too big. Engage is definitely the least interesting game birthday-wise. The same can also be said about any references or nods, there really aren't any. You could argue that Rafal's birthday, December 31st, is a nod to how he is, chronologically, the last character to be recruited, but that's definitely not as clear and obvious as what we saw in Awakening, for example. But it does tie in nicely to a fun thing I want to end on. Which characters have their birthdays on real-life holidays? We already know Rafal, that's New Year's Eve, and we talked about a few Japanese holidays for Awakening, but there's more than only those examples. Although, it is clear that some effort was put in to avoid certain holidays. For example, despite us now having more than enough units to cover each day of the year, holidays like Halloween, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day and Easter are all still free in the Fire Emblem calendar. Valentine's Day isn't though, as in Engage, February 14th is also Fogado's birthday. Hiragi may be the prince of the very Japanese land of Hoshido, but his birthday is actually July 4th, American Independence Day. Other holidays can be a little hard to place because they aren't always held on the same day every year, like Hanukkah, Thanksgiving or Chinese New Year. But it is interesting that there is clearly some effort made to avoid certain holidays, but it's not completely accurate either. Especially Fogado on Valentine's Day is noteworthy. That is a date, say, Fire Emblem Heroes actually celebrates. Anyway, that's been it for this look at birthdays in Fire Emblem. Which character do you share your birthday with? Or do you need Fortune's Weave to finally give you a birthday buddy? Share it in the comments below. And for me, it's Bennett if you're wondering. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.